try fixing on Reddit, keeping up energy levels with high volume of meetings. I was a product manager in, they use the acronym FANG, which is the Facebook, Apple, I don't remember what the other, Google, blah, 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 the big tech companies for the past 4 years. Some PMs who impressed me the most were those people who were able to be consistently sharp, focused, and energized in meetings. I mean, folks who had 20 to 30 hours worth of meetings a week and never had a moment where their enthusiasm was down and no single comment where their logic was off in my observation. I'm not that way. I struggle with maintaining energy throughout the day, and I'm curious how realistic it is for me to train myself to be that way, or how much of this stems from the folks being type A. For those of you who are good at having a consistent meeting presence, how do you do it? How much of it was skill development versus being naturally gifted? And I thought this kind of went into our digital friction topic the other week, and meeting fatigue and some of the things we've just talked about in the past. I will say my job is 20 to 30 hours bare minimum per week of meetings in the product management space. And I think that's probably slightly higher for me, just because when you have multiple product managers working for you, they're the ones doing more of the actual execution, and you're in meetings helping guide, mentor, provide feedback, all of that kind of stuff. But I think PM should be talking to people most of the time. You should be hearing from customers and salespeople and prospects and talking to your engineering teams. Your job is meetings. And there are artifacts and things that you're creating, but I don't know. For me, a product manager is a relationship person who is going and talking to people and getting their feedback and just listening and sharing. And I don't know, like if you're not finding yourself able to commit to this level of constant back and forth interaction, this might not be the role for you. Now, there's such a thing as too many meetings, and there's definitely a degree of, how do you keep yourself going when you have that many meetings, and how do you keep yourself positive? But I don't know that I'm the best person to ask this one, because that is my job and I'm used to it, and I don't know that I can diagnose why I seem to be good at this. So I don't know. I was curious. You've sort of complained about meetings in the past, so I'm sort of curious what you think about this one.
Yeah, so my complaint with meetings is a little different. It's because normally, maybe the last 10 years you're coming into companies that you're trying to start something like an enterprise architecture discipline, right? And a lot of companies have tried it and are retrying it. So you're in meetings, but there's a context switch between meetings and then actually being technical, right? Where you're like, well, I really want to get hands on. Like I can build that big data stack, and actually I could probably do it much quicker than I can explain it. So my frustration is more like you get less done because you're having to explain to somebody else how to do it. I
Sure.
will say this though, um, a lot of, especially since we went remote, a lot of the way I view meetings for people who are trying to climb the ladder is, how are your companies going to see your worth if you're not able to go into those meetings? Because you're not in the office anymore. It's not like I'm looking at the junior engineer at the whiteboard with the seniors, and all the seniors, I'm visually seeing the seniors listen to this junior, and they're drawing the boxes, and I'm
Right.
thinking to myself, wow, right, this kid, there's something about that. They're going to be a leader, or they're going to be an individual contributor that I can rely on. You don't have that without the office. So climbing's a little bit harder, and the meetings are really the stage, I think.
Sure.
So it's a weird one where I feel like career advancement has almost changed since COVID. Um, how do I deal with it? I guess there's a little bit of that when I still go to meetings, which is the striving for efficiency, the wanting to rally the people around you, right? Like, hey, if we have to go over the wall to certain depths, I'm going with you, right? Like I'm accountable. So for me, there's a necessity to it. As a leader, you've got to be there.
Sure.
And
I would imagine if you're a, product manager for 4 years in your career, then you're not necessarily in that same situation. And I'm trying to think, there is probably a degree of make sure that you are going and you are helping your teams have effective meetings, because it probably is draining if you're going to the fifth meeting of the day and it's yet another meeting where you have no idea what the purpose of the topic is, what the expected outcome is, what the agenda is, who's doing what. So maybe there's part of it which is, yeah, if you're on Wednesday and it's hour 25 of meetings so far and they're just a slog and they're terrible to get through, and that there's probably a degree of you needing to speak up and say, these meetings aren't effective. Of course they're killing my enthusiasm. Of course I'm not having fun here.
Yeah, but I hate paying you the ultimate compliment. If I'm a leader on a call with Kevin Euland at the 4 year mark,
Yeah,
not only I'm not just leading alone, it's the chemistry, right? So how am I
sure.
utilizing Kevin in the meeting to get my point across? Or how much am I calling on Kevin to say, hey, you should talk to Kevin about that. One of his skill sets is this. Like you guys should
Sure.
get together and talk through it, right? So it's not just I'm there, oh, my voice and my wisdom is what everybody needs to hear. It's it's just like architecture. You a lot of the time you're just connecting people and saying, oh, so you're looking for those smart people on the call with you, right? To it's almost like the symphony. You're like you're playing music together in the meeting and playing off
Sure.
each other's strengths.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Like, find the things in the meeting that are going to keep you engaged, and find those folks who you can bounce ideas off of, who you can share things and keep each other engaged in those meetings. Yeah, I like that.
I think it's a good opportunity to be accountable too. Like I've gone overly, I've gone overly accepting of accountability in my career because I was worried about accountability earlier on. Like, oh well, that person screws up, like it could be perceived to be me, and I worried about that sometimes, not for long. And then pretty early in my career I was just like, nah, screw that, I just want to accept accountability. I just
Sure.
always want to be accountable, and if I'm in charge of these people I want ultimate accountability. Like if they screwed up, I didn't train them right. If they did something incorrectly, again, I just didn't train them right. We didn't talk enough, not enough comms. So I like to be in the meetings where I can, you hope over time as you're working with different groups that they see like when they say they're going to chase something, they will chase it because they've accepted the accountability. So I do think it's important, depending on your level of leadership or accountability, those are the places where I feel it's more important to be accountable, right?
Well, and I think that's one of the tricky parts of product management. And I think this is probably true of a lot of roles, but product, it feels this way. I probably have a bias here, but you don't often have the authority, and you're often not in that official leadership position. And so the only way you're going to accomplish those kinds of things is through influence and through leadership by example, finding, like you were saying, the people that you can bounce things off of and you can influence them to do those kinds of things. So in your role in this meeting, if you do notice everyone's kind of slogging through it and no one's engaged and no one's interested in it, you could take that on as a thing that you could make the meeting more interesting. You could speak up, you could call on people, you could find things, and you could, through that influence, it's not your direct responsibility to assign a task to Sally on the engineering team, but you could call on her. You had that conversation with her last week about that thing, and maybe through that conversation, everyone can realize, oh yeah, Sally can be the one to take that action and go away from that. So by, yeah, what are the things you're doing to keep the meeting engaged and going and people talking and making it a fun and interesting conversation? I think too many people probably also think of meetings as like this thing I have to go and show up to and listen to a bunch of people talk about, and why am I even in this call? And I don't know, maybe this is also slightly personality. I've always been the person who, if we're 5 minutes into the call and it's not going the direction I want it to go, I just say something, even if it's not my meeting. I'm like, what are we trying to do here? Just trying to understand, what am I gonna, like, there's a nice way to say, hey, just wanted to say, I feel like we're kind of off topic. Is this what we're trying to get out of this? Is that the right conversation for me and Sally to go have? Like, you gotta sometimes just speak up and fill the gap in the inefficiency of the meeting. And that's, again, one of those things where that might feel awkward to you, and if it does, ask yourself if you should be a product manager, because being a product manager is kind of awkward sometimes. It's kind of about finding the way to have those conversations and get people talking to you and sharing. And yeah, I don't know.
And that's exactly right. I think that's a good connection back to what I was saying. If I join a meeting, there's a lot. Sometimes there's a lot of information. Like let's say I'm filling in as I'm doing something that's very general. There's a lot of different disciplines on the call, and I can speak to 75%, maybe 50%
Sure.
with real expertise. I don't want to feel like I'm I haven't already prearranged with people like, hey, you can Kevin, you are way better to talk to this piece than me. So
Right.
like I feel like that's exactly right. That's the orchestra again, right? Like the symphony is me sort of setting up earlier that sometimes they're pre-planned where you're like, hey, we're co-hosting. But other times at the
Right.
beginning of the meeting, you say, you guys should feel very comfortable talking about this stuff. I can do it, but I'm not going to make it sound like you guys. You guys play the triangle way better than me, right?
Right. Yep.
Um, so yeah, I think the advice here too is like just try little safe things. Try one safe thing in your next meeting where you're not going to sound stupid. It's not redundant. It could be a question that's meaningful, but just try small things. You'll start to find your chemistry with other people.
Right.
Um, and then eventually you'll start to do five small things in a meeting. Then eventually you're running meetings and you're doing 115 small things, right?
Right. Yeah. I recognize that product management and a lot of jobs are, there's an 80-20 rule of 20% of the time it is kind of the slog. It's you're stuck in the meeting and it's just you and the engineer figuring out how to document the one weird tricky thing, and no one likes having to write the 5 bullet points of doing the whatever because it's just the thing we need to document so we can move on to the next one. It's the meeting you got to have so you can just all do the whatever. Like there are parts of that, but at least in my experience, fun product management, good product management, most of my meetings are fun and interesting. I'm listening to other people talk to me about smart and interesting challenges, and I'm hearing feedback from people and getting to drill into what they're doing and ask them follow-up questions and understand why this is a problem or the thing that they can't do. Like, if you're not, this might also be a symptom of like the type of company or role or thing that you're doing that you need to find the joy, and maybe you're not in the right role, the right type of company, the right type of software. Maybe it's not the thing that's engaging your brain. I don't know. If you're product management, it's fun, it's brainstorming, I'm the type of person who wants to understand what the problem is, and I want to go and ask all of the whys to understand what's really going on and dig in past all of it. All of that's interesting to me, and if that's not interesting to you, if that's not keeping your mind engaged, are you in the right industry? Are you working on the right product? Are you in the right role? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a ton of product managers out there who can't stay engaged in meetings. But I don't know. Meetings most of the time are interesting discovery processes, and that's super fun.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And especially if you can find the right culture. The worst
Right.
cultures will be you go in a meeting and you can't be humble and ever feel like you can expose yourself and the things you don't know and rely on other people to help you fill that gap because the culture is, oh, look at this guy. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. It's like, of course I
Right.
don't. Like sometimes I'm
Yeah.
talking about things I don't know about. And guess what?
Exactly.
I'm gonna have this person fill in the 95% of it for me because I'm
Right.
willing to accept that that person knows more than I do. So they're the worst cultures. But if you're in a healthy culture, these things are fun. I learned
Yeah.
so, again. I don't want to compliment you and others, but there are some people like I really enjoy going to a meeting with because it just shapes my framework a little bit more. Like, I
Right.
like that this person says it that way. That's how I'm going to do it in the future.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's the way to summarize this. Is I learn a lot in meetings. The best meetings I learn a ton in, and that's great because I don't know. Am I a nerd who just likes to learn? Probably. So yeah.
Yeah, and let me clarify here too. My final point on this is a lot of my meeting fatigue is not being in the meeting, it's finding a place for my meetings that doesn't clash with the
Sure.
Tetris on my calendar. And it's the anxiety of there's two meetings here, and both of those people think their meeting is more important. So the priority isn't common between them. So a
Right.
lot of my digital friction in meetings is there's obviously meetings that just shouldn't be on there, but a
Right.
lot of my anxiety is where to get things in and how to get things out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.